I've been working with clay for 13 years. A lot of my ideas just started channeling through this thing and the inherent poetry of it. I mean, it's been utilised for thousands of years in most regions of the world, in commemorative ways, in functional ways. It's very tied to our survival as a species and is so connected to the earth. I'm obsessed with how receptive it is, and this is a really big component of this work, a material that can record gestures, the finest to the hardest, and then be made permanent. There's just so much to work with. Because in the development sort of design phase of this, just conceptualising, I was thinking about people in beds being cared for. So those forms with this cradle, I just imagined that as a holding space for people. Similar underneath as a core component of the work was the patients and those committed to their care that are part of this facility, wanting to bring them into the process. So I facilitated a workshop at the hospital over 2 days, sort of a no-holds-barred process of whatever you're feeling, put it down. I'll translate that physically and directly onto a tile that will exist on this piece forever.
So just create something in that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Carve into it. The deeper it goes, sort of all of the texture going in is best for how it'll transfer.
Okay. Beautiful. And then just help yourself to a tool.
Yeah, whatever tool takes your fancy. And it was so varied and beautiful to have patients from all sorts of different wards, paediatrics, maternity, babies, footprints that had been born that week, all the way through to nurses and doctors and surgeons, interns, social workers, switchboard operators, ambos, physios, cooks, cleaners. It was extraordinary to be translating so many meaningful marks and ties just directly to is what it means. A simple structure that has so many layers underneath it, thanks to the humans that contributed to it. I think people have a really fundamental necessity to memorialise, and when they know something's going to be permanent, it brings out something special. It's something that connected me to this material in an initial sense, and something that I see they sort of let go but engage so deeply at the same time. And it's by virtue of a material that goes through such a transformation. The wetland area that used to exist where the hospital now is, there are 2 gum species that grew in abundance there, river red gum and swamp marna gum. I wanted that to be reflected on the surface of the work. I used this process, taking an imprint using a clay slab on river red gum trees and swamp marna gum trees. And like the workshops, just recorded the gesture of that texture and then gets transferred as a plaster stamp that gets imprinted onto the tiles themselves to reflect what used to be there and predominantly was there as the most abundant physical material of the site. The handmade travels all the way through every step of the process that we've done. It's something that I've always fixated on and enjoyed, finding a good process and getting in flow. small but effective. Similar to how I've made these tools, they're ugly, but they work. It's a really beautiful process to assemble a highly specialised and talented team. I've assisted with their work, and just as they're assisting with mine, there's sort of this beautiful reciprocity to creative practice. This cradle form, we've made them all and tended to them all in quite an intimate way. So there's a level of care in this highly mechanised process because of the decision to make all these by hand. The hospital and the redevelopment site is really close to the coast. You can go out into the ocean and look back and you see the towers, and there's a lot of different minerals, and there's very beautiful clay under the surface, quite iron-rich clay that's being excavated. The glaze recipe that we developed for this work incorporates that iron-rich clay content. A little bit of that goes a very long way, and it's one of the really core ingredients of the glaze recipe, using this beautiful, natural, abundant material that has existed for millennia right there. The way that we fired these pieces leaves a lot to not quite chance, but an alchemical process. They've all been fired in cone 10 reduction, 1290 to 1300 degrees. Too hot to look at with your eyes kind of heat. And it's really intense for the pieces, but brings out colours that can't be achieved through any other firing method. The top of this piece, it catches the morning sun and it points towards the setting sun. I guess that was a pretty instinctive thing to do. I have a very dear mentor of mine for a long time. She's 95 years old now. Ursula talks in terms of people are taking their journey west, and it's a bit of a nod to her, as well as just the poetics of a rising and setting sun, the passing of days. I just wanted the work to catch that and point towards that. It'll be a gathering point of sorts, a wayfinder of sorts. The amount of people who participated and contributed. There's human stories all over this. All of those human markings, references to the place, references to the history and the materiality and the beauty of the country, all the way through to the humans that now exist there doing really important and intense jobs. I guess there's a lot of bridges that I hope are traversed by people hanging out with this thing. Thinking about the viewer and the experience of the work feels quite far out of my control. In a sense, I put as much into it as possible. I work as consciously and get the right people around me to make these things happen. I hope that what it means to me translates to a certain degree, but I think the human marks, they they've travelled for millennia. I'm just contributing to something that's been happening for a really long time.